Welcome back to the Manor. Julian McBain here, and we are back with migration. I honestly don't know how much longer migration is going to go on. I see that they're starting to draw down the pheromones, quote unquote. But it's they extended migration to make up for the fact that there was no summer mayhem, and I get that. But I'm curious to see how long it goes on. So we'll figure that out as time goes on. But I will keep doing the daily as long as I can. I don't get to it every single day, but I try to do it most days. Not that I can use the daily tokens for anything useful, but that's okay. The only thing I would use it for is the neurobotic boosters, of which I am swimming in. Nice. Nice. Sad part is I've never touched the stuff. Like, I'll make all the jokes. I have never touched the stuff. Okay. Before we get too deep in, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the Manor. Please take a moment and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. What I wanted to talk about today is something that I've kind of been contemplating on various levels. You all know that I'm very deep into philosophy, and I have a desire to try and bring back the deep philosophy of the world. I think it's something that we have lost. I think it's something we desperately need, and I think that's why things are so chaotic right now. Because we don't have a widespread deep philosophy anymore. We've become too not secularized, although that might be true. In my opinion, that's likely true too. But it's because we have moved away from deeper meaning to just shallow pursuits. I think that has a direct that's directly part of the reason that life right now is so chaotic and why things are so insane. And so that's one of the reasons I do what I do is I've said it before, I want to build culture and try to bring back some of those older ways. Keep the good stuff we've discovered, but try and bring back the methods. That's not a really good way to put it either, but like hundreds of years ago, you had philosophers, and they contemplated life, and they would contemplate life and discuss it with each other and discuss it with the regular people, and they'd ask for the opinions, and they'd all kind of knock things around, and people had access to this. Now we're talking back probably pre-Middle Ages. We're talking like the classical era, when school was widespread as it is today, and while there was struggle and suffering, it was less so. Think the Greeks and the Romans as opposed to the Middle Ages. And actually this largely played out in the Byzantine Empire, which was actually the Roman Empire, but historians separate it as the Byzantine Empire just to mark the fall of Rome and when the capital of the Roman Empire moved to Constantinople like full time. Because of course the Visigoths sacked Rome, and Rome fell and actually became a puppet state or a client state of the Roman Empire, which was now based out of Constantinople, modern day Istanbul. But anyway, they had the ability to actually have deep philosophy and really contemplate the meaning of things. And there are a lot of books out there about it. And I think right now the psychologists probably have the closest thing we have to it. Because as far as I can tell, the Academy, not the Academy, that's like Hollywood, but the education establishment has abandoned true philosophizing. And I found that to be true when I was in college. I think it's even worse today. So yeah. So what I wanted to talk about tonight is something that I think is going to make a comeback in the next generation to 2 generations, and that's apprenticeship. See, when I was a kid, I was told go to college. That's the only way you're going to make, any significant amount of money, go to college. So I went to college, and I ended up $120,000 in debt, had an associate's degree in general studies to show for it, because I did stupid things when I was in college, as many college students do. I wasn't focused. There are other reasons too, like there was disagreement in my family over how we should live. Like my parents divorced when I was very young, and my mother was very much in support of high academic achievement, and I think there was a lot of utility to that. And my father was like, no, you go to work and raise a family. And there's a lot of utility in that. And I made the mistake of trying to do both at the same time. Both were good ideas, but you got to pick one. So after 3 years in college, I took my associate's degree, had $120,000 in debt. And that could have been alleviated. And I'm not even working in the field I was in, not even close. And the funny thing is that years before, my cousin, who is a master electrician, had offered to apprentice me when I was old enough to apprentice. Now, unfortunately, he moved way halfway across the country before I was old enough to become an apprentice. But if I had followed through, none of the problems, not none of them, a good chunk of the problems I had throughout my 20s would not have manifested. And part of the reason is because I wasn't educated on the usefulness of apprenticeship. Now, part of it, of course, is also because, when you're in your 20s, you're not very smart. And I'm sorry to any of my viewers who are in their 20s or teenagers going to be in their 20s. That's just a fact of life. They say adulthood starts at 18. At best, it really starts at 21. And even then, you don't know what the fuck you're doing. Okay? That's just a fact of life. I look back on my 20s now, and I'm like, dear God, what was I thinking? And you know what? You will too. And that's okay. The purpose of your 20s is to figure out who you are as an adult. You spend 18 years under the watchful eyes of your parents, and then from 18 to 21, you're often in college. Or you're doing an apprenticeship. You're learning. Mostly in college right now. I'm going to talk about apprenticeships in here in just a minute. But the purpose of your 20s is to be stupid. Preferably not so stupid that you permanently damage your prospects, but that's basically what they're there for, is to learn. You're stupid in your 20s, so you're smart in your 30s. But here's the thing about being stupid in your 20s. You have to learn the lessons that are to be learned by being stupid in your 20s in order to be a useful adult in your 30s. And there are a lot of people out there that actually overcome the foolishness of youth early on. Or at least they adapt to it better. They adapt to it better, and they overcome things, and they're able to pick up their burdens and figure things out, and they start families just like they did back, not even 20, 30, 2 generations ago. That was the norm. You were married and had kids by 21. But life was much different back then, and you would find a job, and you'd be a company man if you were a guy, or a homemaker if you were a woman 2 generations ago. I'm not saying that was necessarily the correct way to do things. That's just the way it was. And you'd work for a company for 40 years and retire. And you retire with a pretty good pension. But that's not the way life is anymore. And so anyway, apprenticeship. I'm really I tangented there really hardcore because I felt it was necessary to lay the groundwork. But here's why I think apprenticeship is so important. Because the thing about colleges, especially the big universities, there's absolutely no personal touch whatsoever. They don't know your name. I went to a college where all my professors knew my name. Like, by name. And I had actual conversations with them. Our biggest lecture hall had 3 rows. That's how small the college I went to was. That was our only lecture hall. No, I'm sorry, it had 4 rows. The whole lecture hall might be able to fit 50 people if they're all being really, if they're all, comfortable with each other. it was small. And by comfortable, I mean they don't mind cuddling up with each other. It was small. But I think that we've lost something by eliminating the apprenticeship. And I think that's a bad thing. I think that we need to bring them back. And in some places they still exist, and in some places they've rekindled them. As you all know, I'm a Freemason, and apprenticeship is a big part of becoming a Freemason. And the mentorship you receive as an apprentice, as an entered apprentice, is very foundational to learning the craft of Freemasonry. And I think that if I had not gone through that formative process, I would not be where I am in the Freemasons today. In fact, I guarantee I wouldn't, because I don't think I would have been able to follow through. And see, the purpose of being an apprentice, the purpose of apprenticeship is to have a mentor that holds you accountable to doing your shit. I mean, yes, they're going to teach you things, and they're gonna run you through, and they're gonna show you techniques, and they're gonna show you the trade, right? Whether you're an operative stonemason, or an electrician, or a plumber, or even in the historical organization I'm a member of, the SCA, they have 4 different tracks, and each have their own version of apprenticeship. They call them different things. Like, apprentices are the actual term apprentice is used for those who dedicate to arts and sciences, but a squire or a provost or a protege, they're all apprentices of as such. And so these are all things where you are being directly mentored by a single person, and that person is only mentoring a few people, right? They don't have a class of 20 or 30 people they're teaching by lecture. They're sitting down and they're going through things with you a piece at a time and teaching you the techniques, and they graduate you to whatever the next level is, whether it's journeymanship or fellowcraft, or what have you. And then they take the next apprentice, and they do that so they can focus as much of their attention on their apprentices as humanly possible. And yes, there are some trades where you'd have multiple apprentices for a single master, and I don't think that's a bad thing, especially if the apprentices are expected to help each other and to mentor each other at the same time they're all being mentored by the master. See how that works? And so you've got this reciprocity going on. So, like, if I was taken on as a I was taken on as a cadet by a Don. That's a master-apprentice relationship. They don't use the same terminology. There's different connotations in that organization. But I was taken on as a cadet by a Don. The Don teaches me, Don as in Don Diego de la Vega, not other phrases. D-O-N. I can see all y'all giggling back there. Shut up. Get your mind out of the gutter. So I was taught techniques. I was held accountable to learn them. I was held accountable for not showing up. And I was challenged. I was challenged until I was ready to move up. Now, I have not in the end, due to circumstance, and I'm not going to get into all of that crap, I am not going to ever become a Don myself. That particular organization has been closed. But there is another path that was created that I could move into should I have the capability and grow into it. Now, as it happens, my mentor is now 2,300 miles away. That mentorship has effectively come to a close. And he was also the one who taught me all of the skills of the fencing school I was a member of. Because that was an apprenticeship relationship there too, between scarf and cord. And actually I became a cadet after I was pretty much done being a cord. I was just waiting for a test. Which took me another 2 years to get, but whatever. But that mentorship grew me as a swordsman far better than I could have ever learned by just going to swordsman classes, which they do hold. We're learning scattered individual techniques from various teachers. That relationship is very, very important. And later on, I would take on people to mentor myself in a very similar fashion. No titles, really, but just in a similar fashion. And so, and currently I'm kind of on hiatus from that, but, you know, COVID. But I feel like I am who I am today because of that mentorship. And I am who I am today because of the mentorship I had when I became a Freemason and was an entered apprentice. And was mentored not only as an entered apprentice, but I was also mentored through my fellow craft. And so it's the utility of apprenticeship, I think, is self-evident. And so how do we bring that back? Because it's not going to come back on its own. And I think that a lot of people have lost the art of mentorship, of true mentorship. And it's something that we have to rediscover and rekindle. And I think the first thing is that those of us who are in positions to be mentors, to teach people something important, need to take up the mantle of doing so. You know, brush up on whatever it is you are highly skilled at. What is your profession? What is your bread and butter? What is the thing you do the best? And then find someone who's new at it. And then just show them a couple things. Not even show them, just ask them questions. Let them ask you questions. And maybe over time you'll develop a friendship. And maybe through that they will ask you or you will offer them mentorship. One of my fencing students, she had been a fencer and she had not picked up a sword in years. And I could never figure out why, because she had the poise and the bearing of a sword. And so I talked to her about it, and we had a few dialogues about it, and she told me her story, and like, okay. And so one day, a couple weeks later, I'm like, you know, things had wound down, and, you know, we're getting ready to kind of pack. We got about half an hour left, but there aren't many fights going on. And so I turned to her and say, hey, let's go do some drills. And she's like, well, okay, you know, I can do some drills. You know, we had been talking a little bit more, and I'm just like, hey, let's just do a couple of drills. You know, nothing huge, nothing stressful. We'll just kind of like get the feel for it again. And that's how I got my first fencing student. And to this day, she sees herself as my student. And she's also one of my best friends. Actually, she is my best friend. But I still make an effort to mentor where mentorship is desired or needed. And it's not all one way. I have learned so much by mentoring from those I have mentored. It's incalculable. You stand to benefit by being a mentor, not by the honor or the ability to lord it over people, but you will learn so much. They say that you learn the most about a subject when you teach, and this is very, very true. I believe that that's incontrovertible. And so I believe that this is why I think mentorship is so important. This is why bringing that back is critical to rebuilding the way that we function as. I think that would bring people closer. It'll make society overall better because we're all teaching each other a specific skill and making each other better. And it's not the same as like mass education where you're trying to teach facts in as efficient a form as possible. But see, the point of becoming an apprentice is to learn how to be a better you. You know, I've long been an advocate of building yourself up. You know, find the work that you need to do in order to become the best you can possibly be. But the funny thing is you don't have to do it alone. Because, in fact, I would argue that you can't. It's very important that you be an individual. But at the same time, you can't possibly teach yourself everything you need to know to build the house that is your life. And I don't mean like the house you live in. I'm talking about global. Ooh. 135 pet. Thank you, Mindark. You can't build the house on your own because you aren't a perfect carpenter or mason. You've got to learn how, and being a mason, I almost always use stone building allegories. I know a lot of clergy who use carpentry allegories because Jesus was a carpenter. But I'm going to use stone allegories. When you pick up your tools and you have a stone block, when you start out, you do not have the skills to polish the block to make the perfect block to be the brick in your home. You have to learn how to use the tools to smooth the block. And you're going to make mistakes because it's not always obvious the best way to go about doing that. And in fact, more often than not, it's the exact opposite. You're going to think you've got the right of it and come to find out you're screwing up. Like backing into a long tooth. And so you've got to learn the skills, but you can figure it out on your own, and you might waste the next 30 years of your life figuring out how to polish this one block, or you can go to someone who has done it before and they can mentor you on how to polish this specific block, because unlike a temple, a Masonic temple, or a stone house, the house that is your life, your individual life, is not made from blocks of the same stone. Because those blocks represent skills. They represent life lessons. They represent the deeper meanings behind what you do and what you have. And so you learn, like, one block in my house that is my life is my swordsmanship. And I have worked hard, and that's still a very rough cut stone. But it's better than it was 5 years ago. And I'm able to apply the mortar to it a little bit more effectively. And because unlike a real life house, I can actually remove a block and work on it again and then remortar it with a trowel and slide it back into place without making the rest of the building fall down, I can continue to polish that stone. And the same goes for other things as well. Currently, I am learning, the stone that represents, the irony of me using this allegory, the stone that represents the work I do in Freemasonry, I am currently working on polishing up and becoming better at. I am being mentored. Even though I'm a Master Mason, I am still being mentored. I'm being mentored by the Worshipful Master of the Lodge on how to get the ritual down. And so I've pulled that stone out, and I've gotten rid of the offending mortar, and I am polishing the stone to make it better. And eventually, at least for the time being, I will remortar it and slide it back into place and scrape the excess mortar with my trowel and move on to the next one. And see, that's what you need to do. That's what we all should be doing. And don't think you only can have one mentor. And don't think you can't do both mentoring and be mentored, even in the same skill. So, like, I am being mentored by the Worshipful Master to be good at a particular piece of ritual. That's a certain type of skill. And I was never in theater. I'm not great at memorizing lines. I have to do it a very specific way, and I know it's fairly inefficient. But if I was called upon, I could also mentor an entered apprentice. And that is something I can do because I've been through that process before. That is a skill I've already acquired. It's on the same stone block, but that level of polish I have already gotten down, or else I wouldn't be a Master Mason. It's the same for any skill set, whether it's public speaking, or it's regular trades like electrical or plumbing. You know, maybe you are really good at putting in electrical outlets, and there's an apprentice there, and you might still be an apprentice yourself, or maybe you're just a newly fashioned journeyman. An apprentice doesn't know what they're doing with the electrical outlet, and you teach them how to properly wire it and install it into the house, because if you do it wrong, you could burn the house down or electrocute yourself, or both. Especially if you're dumb enough not to leave the power on. And so, but at the same time, you journeyman or high-level apprentice might be getting mentored by your master on how to do something like install circuit breakers or to install the box. And so these are all pieces that you can do, and it's not that would all be on the same block, being your trade. You know, my trade is finance. I have learned a lot about finance. There are things that my boss teaches me, and there are things I have taught my boss, because there are parts of that block, types of polish, that we have each mastered that the other hasn't. And so yeah, I think that is something that we really need to bring back. And I would love to hear your opinions on the matter. I really would, because I firmly believe that if we were to bring apprenticeship back as a normal institution, and we were to talk to each other and figure out what other people are good at, and everyone has something they can teach you. Okay? Literally everyone has something they can teach you, and you have something you can teach other people. And it's not always obvious what that is. Like, even my 13-year-old. My 13-year-old has taught me things, and it might sound trivial that it's about a video game, but he's 13. My 13-year-old has taught me things about the games that him and I play together that I never would have thought of. And so that's not much different. It's a lower resolution, but it's not much different at all. It's the same concept, definitely. And so I would, if you believe that there are people out there that have something they can teach you, I would encourage you to go and learn. Listen to them, and maybe you'll cultivate a friendship, and maybe if you're interested enough in what they have to teach you, and you actually want to do the hard work of learning the skill, maybe they'll be willing to mentor you. And you know what? Maybe they won't. But in all likelihood, if they aren't willing to, or maybe they don't have the spoons, maybe they don't have the time or the capability. I've had a student where I'm like, look, I appreciate it, but we aren't a good fit. You know? But after that, and in fact, that actually happened to me. When I was pursuing a mentorship relationship with a friend, and he knew we would not be a good fit. So instead, he recommended that I go talk to another person at the same level as him to become that person's mentee. And that's actually how I met my Don. Well, not me, but that's how I became he became my mentor. And so I think that it's important that we keep these things in mind as we continue to develop whatever it is that the society we have is turning into. All right, that's all I got. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe down below. We're on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. And as always, I really appreciate the support. We'll see you in the next one.